Oh, 1 second. Let me go grab my phone because I like to see things on the phone to make sure everything's running properly.
Okay, okay. And like the live and whatnot.
Yeah, the live. Because I didn't want to be talking and then we're not live the whole time.
That'd be fun.
Okay, yeah. Looks like everything's good.
All right.
All right. So, if you're tuning in just now, I have with me the lead developer of the game Realm Walkers. This is going to be a monster taming game that's currently in development. This is going to be episode 2 of Tamer Talk. Do you have anything you want to say to the viewers?
Nice to meet you all. I'm the lead dev of Realm Walkers. Hope you guys take this journey with us and enjoy the interview.
All right. So during this interview, I'm going to be asking you 13 questions. And as the viewers are tuning in, they can ask questions too. So the first question that I'm going to ask is, what is your reason for creating this game?
All right. I ended up coming up with two answers to this question. Just because it comes from a different place. My first reason for creating a game is I just I wake up every day with like a deep desire to do so. I want to say this has been like cooking underneath my surface, I guess, since I was a kid. I've always wanted to, I guess, replicate the experience that I had from playing video games for other individuals. Now that I'm an adult, I think it's prime time. I've been sitting on it for pretty much too long, so it's kind of like a I have to at this point. Like everything in my body's telling me just like get up, make this game. Then the second one is because I wholeheartedly think the world needs it, like the gaming world, of course. Um, and you could probably speak to this as well, but there's been like a growing sentiment that there's something missing in video games these days, especially within our genre, which I would argue has grown somewhat stale. And it's time for something refreshing. And I think I have a pretty good recipe for that. So that's my reasoning for making this.
That's a very good answer, and I definitely get where you're coming from. The next question that I have for you is, why did you name it Realm Walkers? Because I'm sure plenty of people want to know this.
Yeah, that's it's a pretty interesting, cool story. But I don't know how familiar you are with Magic the Gathering,
I've heard
card
of
game.
Magic the Gathering, and one of my friends from college, he used to play it. From my understanding, it came out before Yu Gi Oh!, and it's also more complex than Yu Gi Oh!
Yeah, yeah, it's like the OG, like trading card game. Actually, that it's created by Wizards of the Coast, and they're the same people who created the Pokemon trading card game. Actually, they lost it through some crazy like legal stuff or whatever, but they're the ones who created it originally. Of course, it's its own big thing now, obviously, because Pokemon is as big as it is.
Yeah.
But they created it. But there's a story behind their game, Magic the Gathering. So when you go to play the game, you're actually supposed to be what is called a planeswalker. And the planeswalkers in this game, or in their lore, are all these like extremely powerful sorcerers, and they traverse different planes, and they bring with them the creatures from their own world, and they wage war against other planes and other planeswalkers. And then that's literally what you're doing when you play the game. So it was pretty much inspired by that. But I thought like what better way to actually showcase that than a monster taming game where certain monsters live in certain realms and then they go and wage war against other monsters and whatnot, which like kind of gave birth to the whole concept, to be honest.
That's really
So that
cool.
also inspired the name. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that. I wouldn't have guessed that you took that concept from Magic the Gathering about like the sorcerers having like the monsters and stuff from their own realm and bringing it to other realms. That's very cool. I don't think anybody's done something like that.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely feel like I haven't seen it. But I love Magic the Gathering growing up. So yeah, I have so many inspirations for this game. It's kind of ridiculous actually.
Yeah, so depending on how this game pans out, it might attract a lot of people who are fans of Magic the Gathering.
I'm hoping so, because that's actually the where the inspiration shows up in the game, aside from obviously the title, is the battle system. I love one of the things that Magic the Gathering is really known for is that the creatures have a lot of like ability or traits, I should say. And trying to replicate that via status elements. So I have like a plethora of status elements. And to make it less of a issue, that's why I ended up getting rid of types, like type weaknesses and whatnot. Most
Yes.
of that is actually embedded into the status elements instead.
That's interesting and that's different. We need interesting and different things.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Okay, so the third question I have for you is what level of game development experience did you have before trying to make this game?
This was a little bit tricky for me to answer because my immediate answer was zero. But when I was like sitting down and thinking about the question, I'm sitting with my partner, and she was like, "You have way more experience than that." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she reminded me that like when I was a kid, I used to make paper games and I used to make card games and tabletop games, which is like to me, it's the origin. Well, it's not just to me; it is the origin of video games. So I was always sort of rooted in that classic style of game development. I even started taking some video game design classes recently. But then I also was able to go to a couple game jams and a couple years back. So it's all like low level game design, but because it's rooted in like how video games came to be in the first place, it feels like a more authentic background than like if I were to just jump into video game design itself. So not so much on the video game side, but as far as like game design in general, I have like a lot of it just because it's something I always done as a kid.
That is awesome. The fact that you told me that you used to make paper games, I didn't know they called it that like in other parts of America, but the fact that you told me you used to make those type of games growing up as a kid, that makes me more excited for when this game finally does come out.
Yeah, I'm always surprised when other people have like the same experience. But yeah, it was born from like, when I used to play Game Boy, my mom would take my game if I got in trouble or whatever. She was surprised to see me like one day just sitting in my room with a piece of paper and I had drew my game and then also the characters from like Pokemon or Dragon Quest onto the game and I would just simulate going through the game because I knew it so well.
Yeah.
And she was like, I can't even take this thing from you. Like I was like, no, you can't. So yeah, that's where it all came from.
That's really awesome. Another question that I have, this is going to be the fourth question. What is the goal for the final product?
Um, this is also a tough one now I think about it. Because I didn't honestly know what you meant. And I tried to like think about how other people would answer it, but what I came up with was that I want to make a classic game. Like I want, in the same way that like, because I'm a fan of hip hop. Like when a really good hip hop album comes out, people will say like, "Oh, that's an instant classic," knowing that it'll like stand the test of time, and people will look back and be like, "Man, I still remember the day when this dropped or whatever." I kind of want to do the same thing with the game. Like that's the level of success that I want for it. Just something so good and refreshing that people remember it for years to come. And but the more tangible goal is that I actually want to establish a franchise. It's been a while. Like we've been working with the same franchise for a decent amount of time. It's been a while since we've gotten a good one started, and then it evolved from there for a decent amount of years.
Yeah.
So I just want to throw something into that ring.
That makes a lot of sense. I appreciate how you said like we don't have that many franchises because we've had a lot of games that have come and then they just stopped. They didn't make like a part two or a part three, or the sequels didn't do so well. But I appreciate that you said you want to make a game that's so good that people remember it. Like whenever if they play it as a child, they remember it as an adult, or if they're already an adult, that they can talk with their friends. Like you remember back whenever this dropped, whenever it first dropped.
Exactly. Exactly.
The next question, I think you answered part of this already, but the next question I have is, oh, somebody just tuned in. What's up, Rescue Squad cult? I'm gonna ask the next question right now. You
All right,
you
excited.
answered part of this earlier, but it's what are your inspiration sources for world building? So I'll follow up by saying, did you have other inspirational sources besides Magic the Gathering?
For sure. Actually, when anybody asks about what the game is about, I always lean into these two inspirations, and you've probably heard of them, especially since we're in the same community or whatnot. Um, I always say like Skyrim and Dragon Quest Monsters. Those are my two biggest inspirations for the world building. Actually, I can pinpoint exactly like what like Dragon Quest Monsters technically amplified the inspiration from Magic the Gathering because I wanted a world where the storytelling could take on go to another level because the monsters themselves speak. So the whole idea behind intelligent monsters comes from Dragon Quest Monsters, and then that was further amplified by Skyrim because they have like the whole Elder Scrolls series has a like a slew of races and whatnot. Like whether you're like a Nord, a high elf, a dark elf, or whatever the case may be. Um, but that's the other aspect of like the intelligence that I want to go for. I want to go for like a world built around the idea that monsters can be intelligent and yeah, and just see what that looks like in my hands, I guess, or in my mind or whatever.
Your answers are making me more fascinated for whenever the game. Sorry, I should say more excited for whenever the game finally does drop, because I can see that it's not just like you're picking random sources. You're picking well thought out sources to kind of bring the player into the game world.
Yeah, I'm definitely going for like as much immersion as possible.
Yeah, and I can
I
tell.
appreciate you saying that.
No problem. Okay, so number six, the question is, what is the problem and goal of the main protagonist?
Okay, this one, this was I really like this question. It's probably my favorite one because I realized that I don't necessarily have, well, I don't have like one problem that the player's trying to solve. There's a plethora of problems, but because I have like a branching storyline type thing, and the player can make decisions, they decide like what the actual problem is because they can literally be like a hero or an outlaw, and depending on what side of yeah what side of that coin you decide to be a part of, you're essentially going up against the other side, and there are like real world issues that you'll be dealing with, like the heroes they bounty hunt those outlaws. That's their focus. But the outlaws, they monster hunt. They indiscriminately will just like pretty much hunt any other monster. And obviously, with all the monsters being intelligent, it takes on more of a human level of like this is murder type of thing.
Yeah.
So, but for them, it's all resources, and they only care about the particular monster type that they are. Like those are the ones that they'll avoid. But obviously, the worst will still, go on to do it. So that's kind of like how the game is. Just like a plethora of different problems that you decide. Okay, I'm okay with um, eating monsters or something like that, but these people are like vegans or something. Like, but you decide which one you are. Um, and so that's kind of how the whole problem thing goes. But the main goal of the player is to become a monster king. Actually, it's like the like I guess the equivalent in another game, like for Pokemon, you become a Pokemon master. In this game, you become a monster king. But it has gameplay ramifications in terms of you're fighting for territory, you're upgrading an entire squad of monsters, and giving certain monsters like certain ranks, and then you also have a whole base building thing that does evolve into a kingdom. And then the whole problem thing just allows you to decide what type of king you're going to be. So it's like, yeah, you could be an outlaw monster king, which just means you're pretty much on like a on demon timing. And so everybody just looks at you as like this chaotic king or whatever. But you could also be benevolent if you decided to be a hero, and that was your path to becoming king. But that's the whole thing.
Bro, you need to start your Steam page. That sounds real good. Just go ahead and start setting up that Steam page right now, so people can start wish
Yeah,
listing.
I'm hoping to really soon actually because I have my Kickstarter page all previewed up and stuff like that. I haven't made it public yet, but the next step is the Steam page because I want those to happen at the same time. The thing that's holding everything up is that we're just making a demo right now. I want all that stuff to hit when the demo hits, and
Okay.
then we're good from there.
I also like how you said like you're gonna give the player the chance to be like a hero or a villain, because I feel like we need more of that in the genre, because it's so saturated of games to where like you can only be the hero, you can only be the good guy. There's plenty of players who want to see what it's like to actually be the bad guy in the story.
Yeah, and that's something I've always wanted as well. I mean, I remember Pokemon being on the Nugget Bridge and that first criminal asking you like, "Hey, you want to be a part of Team Rocket?" I was like, "Oh my God, this game is about to be something else." And then I was let down, and I've been let down ever since because I've never been able to be Team Rocket. But this game definitely will allow you to do that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's really nice. The number seven question that I was gonna ask you is What is your favorite monster from your game?
Man, so this was hard. It wasn't hard to figure out who this was because I've always known who it is, but it's interesting because I always think that my favorite monster is the mascot, but when games release, a lot of the times the community decides, okay, everybody loves this monster, and that's something that I have yet to see because I haven't really showcased too much. But for me, it's the Goblin character, Jocelyn. He was the first monster created for the project, and I just love everything he's about because he's pretty much like a wild card. I take inspiration from Dragon Quest, and the creators of Dragon Quest a long time ago decided that their main character was going to be a very balanced character, um, just so that the party composition or the player can be as varied as they want it to be, but they will never be without something because the hero can do everything pretty much. That's kind of what Gosling does, but he has a little flavor to him because he's a treasure goblin. And the lore that I came up with, that I continue to come up with for all the monsters, is what made me fall in love with him. He wears this like giant yen coin on his head, um, and it's made of pure gold. But he spends his whole life like just looking after treasure and stuff like that, and collecting coins, which he also puts into his little rattle, his baton or whatever that you can see. But it's a rattle because obviously you can move it around and the coins make noise, and it grows with him as he evolves. And that huge gold hat that he gets is also from the elders. They pretty much give it to the babies when they're born, so that they can carry that for their whole life, and they sometimes use it as shields as well. So it's like really cool. I don't know. It set the tone for all the different monsters. Where it's like I got to make sure everybody's like lore is as dope as this, or at least near it. But he's still my favorite. I just like a little scavenger goblin. I've always liked goblins, and I feel like they don't get enough love, and they always end up being portrayed as like these snarky looking creatures that just deal damage and they're fodder. But I want to make them like center stage and really cool. So Dashlin, and even like his name is just Dash plus Goblin. Yeah, really cool.
I'm really glad I was able to do this interview. We're still going, but I'm just like excited and happy with these responses because I can tell you that you put a lot of thought into your world building, into your character building. All of this is really refreshing because I've been following the genre for a while.
Yeah, me as well. I actually think your page first tipped me off to the fact that there was even a community or that the genre was growing, and I had always wanted something like that to happen. So I could actually say in some weird way, like your channel and everything in the community pushed me to make the game in the first place. Because when I first joined the community, I wasn't making a game at all. I didn't even think I was going to. But here we are.
I'm really happy to hear that because a lot of what I did, I wanted to inspire people to be like, yes, it's possible. You can beat the odds and you can still do things that are your dreams.
Most definitely.
So the number eight question that I have for you is, what is your main source of inspiration for monster designs?
Um, this is the hardest question to answer. Uh, because I can't say that there's a main source. We try to leave the door open for like sources of inspiration from anywhere while maintaining like a strict design philosophy so that everything's cohesive. But there's one big thing that I make sure that when we go to design or whatever, because I'm an artist as well, but the lead artist is the one who like is a professional pixel artist pretty much. Um, I make sure he understands it as well. I make sure that every monster has some means of adding to society in some type of way, shape, or form, whether it's a job, a hobby, or whatever the case may be. Like, if we can't imagine the monster doing something in the world, then they're probably going to be scrapped, or just they're just going to sit on the side until we can pair them with something. And that's why when I talked about Dachshund, I said specifically he's a treasure goblin. And to be honest, originally he was a scavenger goblin, but I like the idea of treasure. Um, and pretty much every other monster that we've created since then, like we have a tinker orc, we have a alchemist frog. Like if they fit in society, that like just amplifies the possibilities that they're going to be in the game. So that's like the biggest thing that we focus on. But as far as like real world inspiration, we draw from so many different cultures, and we want to keep that door open so that we can be like super inclusive in the designs of everything.
Your responses are like music to my ears because I'm listening and I'm like, a developer that actually cares about the product and cares about how players are going to interact with the product. We need more of that in gaming in general.
For sure.
The next question, question number 9. What are your personal favorite monster taming games?
All right, I came up with a small list. So first I'm gonna say all-time favorite is Dragon Quest Monsters 2. That's the one that kicked it off for me. Uh, and I know the normal answer is probably like Pokemon or whatever, but Dragon Quest Monsters 2 did something that I don't think that Pokemon hasn't been able to do, and I don't think any other monster tamer has done, which is what I'm trying to bring to life with Realm Walkers, which is they had a feature where you could go into different worlds. They had specific worlds that you had to go to for the main storyline, but at some point you were able to just like get random keys. I don't know how random they were because I don't know how deep the procedural generation was back then. But as a kid, like that was my introduction to procedural generated realms and being able to just explore random things. That was huge for me, and that's what I want to do with Realm Walkers. So that's why it's my all-time favorite. Not to mention, like I said, the uh, Pocket Monsters. And the funny thing is that we talk a lot about how we want to actually label the community as far as like where it's going to be creature collectors versus monster tamers. And in Dragon Quest Monsters 2, they were literally named monster tamers. So I think it's really fitting that the community is labeling the games or the genre monster taming, and that specific game is the one that had all of its like characters calling themselves monster tamers. So that's like my favorite all time. And then I do put Pokemon on a list, and then I have more recent things that I like as far as Monster Sanctuary, Suriname, and Moonstone Island. But then there's three that I put on the list that are like honorary mentions because I personally consider them monster tamers, but I don't think that if they're generally talked about or accepted within the community. And that is Final Fantasy Tactics, the original, or the remake, which is War of Lions, the Disguise series, and Tangle Deep. All of those games allow you to use monsters, but I completely understand that they don't take center stage. So that's one of the reasons why it's not necessarily accepted within the community. But for me, that was like a huge draw to those games for me.
That's interesting. I, you're the first one to say that Dragon Quest Monsters, the second one, was like your biggest one of your favorite games of all time. And I like that it's a different answer because, as you said before, we usually do get like answers like, "Oh, Pokemon was my first influence," and then I played these others. But you said that Dragon Quest Monsters was like the first one that really stood out to you, especially with the going to different worlds.
Yeah, yeah. And it's weird because like I have a whole story about how like Dragon Quest was even introduced to me. Like I went to um, a random store that just like kind of allows you to sell and buy games or whatever. And my mom was like, "Yeah, you both get $15, me and my brother, and you go pick a game or whatever." And I don't even remember what game I picked because he picked Dragon Quest 3, or Dragon Warriors 3. Back then it was Dragon Warriors, and they changed it to Dragon Quest. Um, but I remember whatever game I had, it paled in comparison to what he had. And once he let me play it, I was like, "Oh my god, this is one of the best games in the world." But then he went and traded it for like Raymond the platformer. And it's not a bad game. I love Raymond, but it's not Dragon Quest or Dragon Warriors 3. And he lost that game, and I did not know that we would even get another game until somehow I ran into Dragon Quest Monsters 2. And then that's when I was like, I was already playing Pokemon, but it was like, yes, I like Pokemon, but this is something completely different. And I've always not liked the fact that Square Enix saw the monsters like aspect of the Dragon Quest games as a spin-off because it wholeheartedly could have competed with Pokemon if they made that the main attraction.
Oh, I definitely agree with that.
But we're here now, so
Yeah. Oh, I'd
yeah,
also
that's
like to say thank you, Mifrix, for joining the channel, for joining the stream. The next question we're going to ask, you've answered this in so many different ways, but I'm just going to say it just in case there's anything the viewers and I might be missing. Will your game bring anything new or innovative to the community? Now, this is not counting the stuff you already said, which you said a lot of awesome things, which we're looking forward to.
um Yeah. I actually wrote down some different stuff. The biggest thing, and this is just to me, so I don't know how other people will see it. I actually don't know how it'll be received once the game is released. I'll see when the demo is. But the biggest thing I think will shake things up is the move creation system that I created.
Excuse me,
It
a
is,
move creation system?
yeah. So it was like when I say, I know earlier I was telling you a little bit about like how when I first started the whole development thing, I was a little unprofessional. What I mean by that is that like the programmer will hit me up and he'll be like, all right, what's next on the list? And if I'm not ready to implement something, I won't like send him anything. And I try not to like just rush something through. So he had been hitting me up for like a week or two. He was like, you have that list of moves so we can, go ahead, add that to the demo or whatever. And I was like, I do have the list, but I don't want to give them to you. Like, I just don't. And then he was like, okay, well, I'll try to do something else. And I was like, okay, just give me a little time. And that day, within 24 hours, I was like, okay, look, I came up with this whole different thing. How do you think this is hard to do from the programming side? And he was like, no, that should actually work. I came up with this system that allows the player to like. It's funny because Skyrim is such a huge inspiration for the game. So you know how in Skyrim you're the Dragonborn and you can learn words that allow you to do the thumbs or whatever the voices, the dragon voices.
Yeah, I remember learning
So in
about
this
that.
one, yeah. So in this one, you can learn in Runewalkers. You're going to be able to learn. The player can learn words. They're like keywords, and they're like portions of spells. And when you learn them, you can match them up with other keywords, and together they come together to make spells. And we already have the base or three strings on that spell list. So you can make a spell with just two of the words together, but we have up to three modifiers to where it's like, let me see if it's the best way I can explain one. But the first keyword would be based on like a classical element. So let's say fire. We have a list of different levels of the fire spells. So we'll have like ember, and then oh no, we'll have it starts off with yeah, I think it starts off with ember, and then it'll turn into pyro, and then it'll turn into like magma or then Vulcan. So it keeps getting stronger, but those are different words. And then we move over to the next set of words, which decide whether or not how it's going to target the enemy. So the first one is like single target. So in that keyword is shot. So we can the moment we create a target word, it'll be like ember shot, and that's just like the lowest level fire spell targeting one enemy. And then if you can literally play through and have like a fire master in the game that actually teaches you, and he'll teach you higher and higher levels as you level up or whatever, and you'll unlock other targetings and stuff like that as you're getting better and learning from this master or whatever. And then as you're learning all these things, it's increasing the amount of things you can learn, and it starts to compound itself once you like go from the fire master to the water master, because now you can still take those same targeting keywords and apply them to your water words, and then now your earth words, and then now your physical moves, and your like palm hit and slash and things of that nature. All of that can like combo into different moves, and then it takes on a whole nother level when you add status elements on top, and then there's healing and defending. So that's like quickly all of a sudden like it was like basic math. Right now we have like 30K combination for the demo, and it's pretty much insane because it's like you decide how your monster is going to grow, and it's not just that one monster, but every monster, because the whole keyword thing is based on your kingdom. Like it's the knowledge of your kingdom. Like as you grow and you learn, so do your like underlings and whatnot. And and it's just crazy, pretty much. That's to me that's the best thing. Like when I made it, I felt like a genius. That was the first time I felt really proud, like designing something for the game. I know it's just like a water in a little droplet in a huge water bucket, but it's still the proudest thing I think I've created for the game so far.
That is really impressive. It was reminding me of you know how in fighting games where there's like a combo you have to like learn the combo to do like this super cool move?
Yeah, for
That's what it
sure.
was reminding me of. But like you're saying, it's like the element, who your target is, how you're gonna use it, and for the spells and stuff. So that's what it was reminding me of. Like you're learning the combos in this monster taming game, which is really cool. I don't think anybody's done that either.
Yeah, so that's like the biggest thing. And another thing that I wanted to talk about was territories. So what we know as routes in Pokemon, because the game is kind of like an open world game, it's sectioned off into like shapes instead of like, well, technically there's still shapes in Pokemon, but because the game is so linear and it's not an open world, um, even back when they were using pixels and stuff like that, you would pretty much just be in one route, and then if you move into this certain like border, you're in the next route or you're in the next town. But because we're going for an open world, we have these shapes or the different territories and whatnot. And part of you becoming a king is you literally fighting for the territories against other king candidates and whatnot. Like so, those are pretty much. I guess those people would, those characters, those monsters would play as the antagonists or gym leaders, I guess, if you want to say that. But they're not necessarily like sitting around in one spot or whatever. They're they're realm walking just as much as you, and so
Oh
you can meet
wow.
them pretty much anywhere. So, yeah, just as like so, it's kind of different from like just gym leaders sitting in a spot. The only time they are like known to be in a spot is when they're part of a story, like a quest line or something like that. So then they have to show up or whatever. But you can run into realm walkers who have their own teams, just like you do. And then you're fighting for those territories. And it's not just against them for the territories, because before anybody owns the territories, they are owned by the wild monsters. So you have to actually go, if nobody owns it, you have to go and beat the alpha of that area, and then that territory is yours. But both realm walkers can come and attack your area, as well as the wild monsters can have an uprising, and you have to go quell that. So there's actually like an ongoing, I have to keep these territories in line. And obviously, based on how much you play the game, you can hold a certain amount of territories.
Yeah, that part makes sense. And as you get stronger, it probably gets easier to maintain your territory.
For sure, for sure. Yeah.
With all this
And then the
information, it's
last thing,
what were you gonna say?
oh, I had one more thing that I felt I was going to share three things originally. I know I talked about a bit more, but there's a lot. But the last thing was there's a thing called a frenzy system, and it kind of works in conjunction with the territories. But I ended up watching like I do a lot of research for the game, uh, trying to make it unique and whatever. But I watched this video and it talked about how old the mechanic of random encounters is, and I was deciding whether or not I wanted random encounters or overworld sprites. And I came up with this frenzy system that allows for both. So initially, when you walk into a route, the monsters are going to be overworld sprites, and you can obviously sometimes find realm walkers, but those are kind of like roaming. Um, but if you defeat all of the overworld sprites, it sends that territory into a frenzy because you're upsetting the wild monsters, and then random encounters start. And then you'll see like a meter will show up on the overworld screen or whatever, and then you have to fill up that meter with how many random encounters that the meter requires or whatever. And when you fill that up, that's when the alpha appears. But the territories are different, so some of them you have to go through waves of frenzy. So like you have to do all the overworld sprites, then do random encounters, then do some more overworld sprites, and then more random encounters. And it does change the spawn rates and how they show up in the levels and stuff like that, getting increasingly more difficult. But it's supposed to pull the alpha out so that you could actually challenge him for that territory.
So is that like similar
But I think
to building aggro? Like you're fighting people in that area and you're building attention to yourself, and then it makes the boss come
yes,
out.
yes, yes, exactly.
Once again,
That's
very
what that's
impressive. I,
oh,
I,
thank you.
I just hope that you're able to implement all of this and the game runs smooth without any like problems.
Yes, yeah, and the programmers like me and him talk a lot about what the game should be capable of and finding shortcuts to make sure. But one of the things that I learned is that like most of the classics that I love, they worked with certain type of constraints and it made their games better because they packed it with as much as they could. And I feel like that's part of why some games don't feel as amazing as the classics do, is because we have so much that we can do with the new technology. I don't think people are like really pushing the boundaries of what we're doing, to make things not only run smoothly, but also to just pack it full of as much content as you can, and make it all still be cohesive and whatnot. A really good experience. So that's what I'm attempting to do, even though, well, we'll see how it all shakes out. The programmer says we're good for now. So every time we add something, we'll just take another look at it and go from there. But yeah,
Yeah, because one of the concerns I had whenever you mentioned it was open world, and you also mentioned that some of these, I think, mini bosses roam around because they're realm walkers too. I was wondering if I guess, I don't know what engine you're using, but I was wondering if the engine would be able to handle that. So many active events or characters, actors roaming around at the same time within the same open world. Because I think you said you weren't going to have them like sectioned off into different areas.
Well, and I think this is something that my programmer was explaining to me. Um, excuse me, hold on. He was explaining that like it we're focused mostly on what the player can see, and so there's a lot of stuff that doesn't have to be loaded necessarily. So they still do function in the way that like routes functions, where it's like when you're in the route, everything in that route is what's like taking precedence over everything else. And so it's like the stuff is pretty much being generated as the player moves. So when
Okay,
I say
okay.
roaming, yeah, when I say roaming, it's not like the player can see all those things happening at the same time. But when they walk into another territory, it's just possible that that a realm walker from some realm walker they met like on the other in a whole different realm or whatever, and show up in a different territory that they're in or a different realm that they're in because they're being generated. But it's from a pool of realm walkers that already exist in this world, pretty much.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense because like what I had imagined in my head, I was like that would also take a lot of RAM, and I'm sitting there thinking, but as you explained it to me now, I'm like, okay, that method should work.
Yeah. So and we're definitely making sure things can work. Just making sure it's good.
The 11th question that I have is what platforms will your game be playable on?
Right now, we're only focusing on PC just because we're not trying to overcomplicate ourselves, especially because we feel like the scope is pretty huge, especially for a startup, and we're just on the marketing side and even just like legal stuff in general. We're trying not to just put too much on our plate. Like we'll worry about those things when we can, especially as long as I'm the only one funding the whole project. Like that's something I only want to worry about putting it on one platform. But we have decided as a group that if things go well enough, because like I said, we want to put a Kickstarter out and everything, things go well enough, we are going to aim for Nintendo Switch 2. Um, just because that's what our roadmap is looking like anyway. That the game won't be out. The game will be out after the release of the Nintendo Switch 2. And we were already looking at the Nintendo Switch as a possibility, but we just think it'd be even cooler if we're one of the first indie monster tamers to hit the Nintendo Switch 2. So we're gonna focus on the PC, and then what like the way Nintendo looks at things most of the time that they try to look for credibility more than anything. So it's actually good that we release for the PC first, and then take on the whole journey of getting to the Nintendo Switch 2.
Yeah, I think that's a very rational approach to the situation because for one, when it comes to monster taming games, most monster taming games are available on PC. And then the second most popular, if I'm not mistaken, which I'm pretty sure I'm not, the second most popular platform for monster taming games would be the Nintendo, like the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, I know there was some discourse within the community about how popular mobile games are for Monster Tamers. I'm not huge on mobile, so I don't even know what games are there aside from like the Nexomon and Evo Creo that just hit Evo Creo 2.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I'm very unfamiliar with the mobile market for games. Yeah, but definitely I know enough about what hits the Nintendo Switch. I've been a Nintendo kid my whole life.
Yeah, it's good to play into your strengths, like the areas that you know well.
Right. Wholeheartedly agree.
This question right here, I'm pretty sure everyone listening is going to want to know this one. What is the expected price of the game? Because that's a big deal. Because like it could be the most amazing game, but as a rookie, if you tell us something like it's gonna be $100 because it's only coming out as the deluxe edition, then everybody's gonna be like, I don't know about all that.
Nah, we're just looking at 30 right now, like somewhere around 30, give or take, depending on what the journey looks like. And I believe so much in the game. I feel like it'll do well. Uh, and I feel like there's just no other way to think. Like you shouldn't be negative about your own game if you're
True.
going through the process of developing it anyway. But I also am very like conscious of other people and their situations and things of that nature. It's been a long time since I paid $30 for a game, but because of how pricey things are now. But I still remember 30 being like the golden spot. Like when Pokemon Emerald came out, it was 30, and I didn't feel any type of issues about that. It's my favorite Pokemon game, so uh, I feel like that's pretty decent.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that, especially considering this. Whenever I look at a game, I always think of supply and demand within the genre. So I'm looking at, is anybody else bringing the same thing to the table for a less price, for a lesser price? But in your situation, you're bringing a lot of unique things to your game within the genre, and I don't see anybody else bringing any of that. So I feel like as a new person, and also the fact that you made sure you got like a good artist for your game. I feel like 30 is fine. I feel like that's a fine price.
I think so too. Yeah, hopefully that's how it is. I know there's a lot of like 20s. Like Monster Sanctuary when I bought it was 20. Moonstone was probably about 20. Ormond was about 20. Uh, so I think that's like kind of normal. But as you said, like I do feel like I'm bringing some new stuff, so I think it'll be a whole different experience.
E-
Uh,
Exactly.
which is
If you're able
yeah,
to give the players what they want, they're gonna be willing to pay as long as you don't do anything crazy, like I joked about earlier. But yeah, they're usually gonna be willing to pay for the game.
yeah. So we're just aiming for that, and we're not aiming for any of that like deluxe stuff, like you said earlier. Like there's no reason for all that. We don't even know right now. We don't necessarily know um, what the post game life looks like. We haven't talked about any type of DLC or anything. Like we wholeheartedly just believe in packaging a complete game. So everything that we can think of, we want to get it in there the first time around. And then if there's enough support for more, then we'll do that. But otherwise, uh, we're just trying to make a good game.
Yeah, and if anyone's wondering, no, this video is not sponsored. Like this was a normal interview, and I'm genuinely interested in playing this game. Like whenever he brings it on Steam, I'm going to wishlist it. Like this is not cap or anything like that. I'm genuinely going to wishlist it, and I'm probably going to play like the full game and everything.
That'd be amazing. Because I actually already watch like pretty much all the videos when they come out. So it'd be pretty cool to see my own game.
Yeah, and thank you. The last question I have is, what is the expected release year for the game?
Expected right now is 2026.
Okay, that's
Which
next year.
yeah, it's a very weird thing because it's like I'm both an artist and a writer outside of game development, and writing is like where I hang my hat on the most. And I feel like that's the for some reason I feel like that's the toughest part of the game, but it feels like it's easy to me. So for whatever reason, I feel like that's not gonna take as much time as it would anyone else. Um, I just love writing dialogue. I've published two poetry books and things like that or whatever. But that's one of the reasons that like I said, I do feel like I have a really good programmer. He wholeheartedly hangs his hat on programming. He specifically said, "I'm not a designer. I'm really good at programming though." And the artist is the same with art. Like he also feels like he's not a programmer or a designer, but he's really good at art. I feel like everybody who is on the team is just pushing it forward. And again, if we get crowdfunding, I feel like that'll just speed everything up as well. Um, but right now, it just looks like 2026 because it's everything's just moving along as smoothly as it should. And the bulk of everything else is going to be on me, like writing things into the game and creating the unique events. Um, and the programmer has already made so many systems for the game because we started with that actually. We didn't go straight into assets. I met the programmer and we hit the ground running. And we just had like placeholder maps and things of that nature. But everything else has been going as far as asset creation. That's what started up most recently, which is why that's the last part for the demo. Um, but we're in such a rhythm right now that everything's just coming out quicker than it ever has. So I feel like we've hit our stride, and it can only get better with more funding. So that's why the Kickstarter looks amazing, and we're aiming for 2026.
Sounds good. And especially considering the fact that you're able to split the workload in the team and everyone specializing in their strength, so that does make the process a lot faster and a lot smoother.
Yeah, and like it just if you're wondering, like the other aspects of the game, those are things that I still contract out to others, um, like music and sound effects and illustrations for like the Steam page and stuff like that. Like those are things I've already like somebody's already made music. We have sound effects. We have placeholder everything pretty much. But we're simply going through upgrading things. The demo is not going to be like a finished product whatsoever. There's going to be placeholder stuff in there as well. But we just want to get the foundation down and then see how the game is received. We want to get some of the more unique features in there. Not everything's going to be in there from the get go, but definitely want to get the big stuff like the spellcrafting thing or the move crafting thing. I wanted that to be part of the demo because I think it's the best feature we have.
Yeah, that
Um,
would definitely build a lot of interest too.
yeah, and well, there's so much more I could talk about, and I don't know how deep you want me to go into it, but I kind of want to save something for the actual game. So
Yeah,
that's a whole
you
nother
can save some
thing.
stuff for the promo to help build up hype.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I've asked him all of the main questions that I needed to ask for this interview, but I did want to say this before we cut out. Did any viewer right now, did you have any questions for the developer? Because I want to give y'all a chance to ask questions if you have any questions.
I'm also curious what sort of questions people could have. Uh, but these are some, in general, just really good questions. Um, I had a lot of fun thinking about them, and just like it also helps to be able to like convey. Because another thing that we were supposed to do with the team is we want to attempt to pitch it to certain publishers just to see what type of response we might get, and if it's a perfect fit, then we'll go in that direction.
Yeah, because publishers can definitely help your game get seen in more places because of the connections they have. Just be careful which publisher you go with, because I've heard bad stories too.
Exactly. Yeah, and I have a bit of experience because, like I told you, I published two poetry books. Um, I know how publishers can be. So I know it's a different field, but at the same time, it's like we know what the bargain is. You either want to make more money or you don't, and you want to you either want to give us more creative freedom or you don't. It's pretty much a balance of those two things, and I've seen enough of it to where it's like, yeah, I'm pretty cautious.
I'm glad. I'm glad you know about that because there's some sketchy ones out there.
Yeah, and I do pretty good with legal documents as well. So like I understand the legal jargon, I should say. I'm not a lawyer, but I at least can read through contracts and understand what I'm reading.
That's a good skill too because not everybody has that skill. All right. So
Yeah,
since we didn't
but
have any specific questions from the viewers, I'm just gonna go ahead and end this interview. And it was nice speaking with you. And I hope people later on come to listen to this interview and they're able to learn some things about your game. And it'll also build interest. They'll tell their friends and they'll share this video around. Because after speaking with you, I can already understand that Realm Walkers will be a very memorable game.
I'm hoping so. I appreciate you having me for the interview. And if anybody does end up listening to the whole thing, I will respond in the comments because I like to watch all your videos anyway. So I'm probably gonna listen back and hear myself speak or whatever. But if people still have questions and they weren't able to catch the live, I'll be able to answer whatever in the comments. So like, share, subscribe to OFC Media.
Oh, wait. Before I cut it, someone just asked, will there be a sale? Oh, so I think what they're asking is the game only gonna be at the flat price, or will there be a sale? Because you know how some Nintendo games, it's that price and it never changes.
Oh, there will be sales, especially because like we're a startup studio, so it's like as soon as we finish this game, we're looking to obviously we're still gonna look at the game itself once it's out, make sure there's no bugs, do our initial updates and whatnot, make sure that the community is good and we're holding up our credibility and stuff like that. But we do want to move on to the next game, and one of the ways in which you can help the next game start its development is to have your previous games go on sale. So we do plan on having sales at certain time periods, lining up with whatever Steam might be doing. Um, and then sometimes I might just put a sale just because, like, if I want to see more people playing the game, I might just do that just because I'm really not too concerned with um, keeping the price at full price. Uh, I really want people to experience the game more than anything else.
Well,
So I'll
I'm
do
really
what I
glad you have that
can on my end.
attitude because from what I've learned is that there's a lot of Steam players that will not buy any game at the listed price. They will only buy a game on sale. So I know there's some players who if they really want to play a game, they'll buy it when as soon as it comes out or just any time because they want to play the game. But there's other people, I'm not sure if it's a majority or not, but there's other people they will not buy a game unless it's on sale. I'm not fully sure the reason why or maybe it's just the Steam culture, but yeah, that's a whole thing.
I do think it's a Steam culture because when I got into the Steam culture, people were telling me, "Don't buy that right now. Like it'll eventually go on sale." And I do believe almost every game I've ever seen on Steam has got gone on sale at some point. So it's pretty much the culture. But I will say the best way to get the game at a discounted price is going to be to support the Kickstarter. Like we're going to have it at a reward tier where you won't have to pay full price, but you'll be able to get the game. So if you're interested, when the Kickstarter drops, definitely support and you'll be able to get the game.
That's a really good idea. If there's any other game developers listening, that is a good idea. So keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to end the stream right here. Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you have a great day.